In this lesson, it's a follow-up. It's been about 4 to 5 weeks since we did the demonstration on plant cuttings using fruit trees, ornamental trees, roses, and shrubs within the property. And I'm going to share with you the results. These include citrus, pomegranates, mint, geraniums, roses, and so much more. And we're going to compare them side by side with using a traditional method of CloneX, which is a over-the-counter product you can find at most big box stores, in addition to 2 natural ways of stimulating root development, which are honey and cinnamon. And there's university studies I'm also going to share with you in today's lesson in regards to how these natural products can work to stimulate root development even more so. Hi, my name is Charles Malky, biologist and plant expert with Eyal Organics, where we grow cool plants and author of Saving the World with the Home Garden. And before we get started, I just want to share a few more helpful tips to make sure you have success when propagating your plant cuttings. The first one is, as you notice that these bins here are in a location that gets morning light and are going to be in the shade during the hottest parts of the day. So I've got them here underneath my gazebo towards the edge where, again, they get that morning sun and then quickly find themselves in the shade within like just a few hours of morning light. What I'm also doing is I'm frequenting my plants at least once, if not several times a day. And every time I see these plants, I've got this bottle of water that I'll simply mist over the top of all of the plants like so. And that is just helping to ensure higher humidity levels on the plants and to keep the cuttings from dying, as again, they're cut from the parent plant and naturally they're going to want to die back. By keeping them hydrated, they'll continue to thrive and stay alive long enough for hopefully them to push roots. And we're going to see the results here today. For those of you that have been following the Eyal Organics YouTube channel for years, you'll know that my favorite way of propagating is simply putting them in a clear cup, making sure I put some cut holes at the bottom for the water to pass through, as you can see in this example. And if you take a look, the water's simply going right through. My potting mix is perlite and vermiculite, 50-50. And traditionally what I would do is take the cup with the cut holes at the bottom and insert into another clear cup without holes, and simply monitor the water at the bottom. As you can see, there's some water there and it's already starting to fill up. And the goal is to keep the water at the bottom 10, 15, 20% tops. The goal is the cutting is sitting above this water level and encouraging the roots to come down as the water is hydrating that lower perlite vermiculite mix and it's being wicked, offering sufficient moisture within the potting medium. As you take a look within it, you can see there's sufficient humidity within the cup. And this is a cup that's simply resting within the bin. So helpful tip number 1 was keeping your cuttings hydrated at least once a day. If you frequent them more often, 2, 3, 4, 5 times a day, the more the better. And that's just going to help keep the cuttings alive long enough. Helpful tip number 2, we talked about the cup and cup method versus the cup and bin method. I like using the cup and bin method for propagating more cuttings. And third is we're dealing with an issue of mosquitoes now in the bin. It's been a month, and what we're doing, like for watering, if you take a look here, when the water level falls below that 10% mark, again, we're gonna wanna keep the bottom of the cups at about 10, 15, maximum 20% water. We're watering the cuttings from the side like so. But as you can see in the water, there's mosquitoes that are now thriving here in this stale water, as it's been about 4 to 5 weeks since we started this cutting process. And again, now we can see that the water level has come up. And this is something that we're regulating on average about every 2 to 3, 4 days, is just making sure that that water level is covering that bottom 10, 15, 20%. So it does take several days for that water to evaporate, despite all the plants that are here in the bins, again, because they have no roots. To remedy the mosquito problem here on the property, when I first discovered it about a week ago, simply need some gum and your power tool. We're simply gonna take the bin, I've got it here at an angle, and we're simply gonna drill a hole right here at the base, like so. And now we've got a drain hole in the bin. So what I would normally do is I'd wait for this entire water to pass. I would then come with the water and water the back, and to continue pushing all of that water out through the drain hole. Once we're done, I'll simply take the gum and plug the hole. So I know this was pretty primitive of a method, but it gets the job done, and it helps basically ensure that we've got clean, non-stale water basically nourishing your cuttings. So what I'm gonna do next is I'm gonna pull these all out into the sun so we can examine the growth and to see just basically visually what's happening above the ground. And then I'm gonna dissect them all real fast in front of you guys in the shade. And hopefully we're gonna be able to measure root development, size, strength, and so forth between the different bins. And then from there, we're gonna begin up potting as many of these plants as possible. So it's gonna be a race project as it's a hot summer day. But again, we're gonna be doing most of this work in the shade. But let me pull them out into the sun so you can get a better visual of what's going on. So this one over here are a variety of plants that we propagated by way of hormone using this CloneX product. As we discussed before, a good hormone will have both antibacterial, antifungal, in addition to root stimulant properties within it. The second product we used here was honey, and you can see the results of the honey product. And then the last one we used here was ground cinnamon, and you can see the results of ground cinnamon in this bin. Just visually looking at all three bins, I would say the one that performed the worst is this one here in the middle, the honey bin. And after doing some further research after the initial propagation, and you'll see with some of the university studies I'm going to share with you later on in this lesson, and you can find those links in the video description below, is that the honey should have been diluted. I think the fact that I used too much honey, that it may have somehow contributed towards the rotting of the cuttings instead of helping to stimulate the root development. So too much honey could have resulted in this. Again, if you take a look, these plants here look a lot more stressed than the CloneX bin versus the cinnamon bin. Starting with the CloneX bin, let's pull out some of these plants. This one here is our tiger fig. If we take a look at the cup, I don't see any evidence of roots on the outside, but again, this is all experimental, so I'm gonna just give it a little bit of a tug. It looks like there is some root. Here we go. Take a look at that. We're gonna have to rinse this off. Look at those beautiful roots. Okay, so now we got a new genetically identical tiger fig. That's one. The next tiger fig that we planted is right over here. And I'm just gonna give it a little tug like the last. Sometimes your cuttings might not grow, as again, this one started to produce growth and roots. Sometimes you might not get growth, but there could still be roots. Ideally, you're gonna wanna empty it out and be more mindful of the roots, but I'm just giving it a tug. Let's rinse it off and see what we can see. And the answer is, as expected, nothing. And the last one over here, our third tiger fig. Let's give that a tug. And again, you see the some growth and the some roots. Pretty impressive. Right at first glance, you can tell that these got pretty long roots compared to the CloneX ones. Check out CloneX. CloneX is like hyper rooting, but shorter compared to just a handful of roots, but several times longer. I wonder if that's going to be the pattern throughout. The next thing I'm going for here is the Parfionca pomegranate tree. This here is one of the world's best tasting pomegranates. That pink that you see on there is from the geranium flower that has been dropping some petals. And I'm just looking, just visually, I don't see any roots. Probably needs about another week or two, but I can see there's quite a bit of growth happening. And let's see what we can see. I'm gonna pull this out and rinse. And you can see there's a little bit of callousing happening, a couple small roots pushing through. So the wood's coming to life. Here's our honey Parfionca pomegranate. And if you rinse that off, you can see again, there's some growth happening. You can see the green tips. And let's see if there's any roots once we rinse off the potting medium. And there's some callousing happening, but I don't see any root development. And then last, we're gonna be doing the cinnamon Parfionca pomegranate. This one here has the most growth on it. And now let's rinse that off. And you can see there's some callousing happening, but again, no root developments. I'd say between the three, even though there's quite a bit of growth on here, it looks like the CloneX hormone did the best. Here we go. Back into the CloneX bin. We're now going to be pulling out some passion fruit. Passion fruit root very easily from cutting. Check out all of these roots. This is basically a 3-in-1 test, and you can see all three are thriving beautifully. I'm going to just rinse that soil and give it a little bit of a tug. And here come the roots. Check that out. CloneX, CloneX, and CloneX. Beautifully developed roots. Beautiful 3 out of 3 results. Next, we're going into the honey bin. Passion fruits. And check out these plants. This one here seems to be alive. This one here seems to be on the decline. This one here barely hanging on. Just checking the side for roots. Don't see any. But let's give these guys a tug. I'm going to rinse the soil off first so the tug's a little easier in case there are roots. And here are the results of honey. Nada. There's nothing there. Compared to this one here, the cinnamon passion fruit cuttings. And if we take a look on the side, I don't see any evidence of roots, but let's go and rinse them off. The plants overall look happy and healthy. Check out even the flower buds right here. Soften this root, the soil media, and rinse. And check this out. Clear difference. We got one root here. We got some root development starting. Barely noticeable. Barely noticeable. I mean, these cuttings are viable, but far inferior compared to the CloneX results. Geraniums with CloneX hormone, and let's rinse the meat. Actually, I always like doing the visual first, see if there's any surprise. And here they are. Check out those roots. So we got roots on our geranium that's blooming. It was not blooming when we put this cutting in. It just shot out this bloom over the last few weeks. And now we've got results number 1. Let me push this back in. These are all going to be up potted towards the end of this lesson. I'm going to give you a demonstration on up potting in just a minute. Next, geranium with honey. And let's soften. Quick examination. Check out the plant. Not quite so happy. Did kind of push out a bloom. And check out the stem. I mean, this is evidence of pretty much what's happening maybe with all the other cuttings, is that the honey is actually burning and killing the plant. And again, the tip in the lesson I got is that honey should have been diluted prior to application. So for those of you that continue using honey, just consider diluting it before you use it. And this here is the geranium with cinnamon. And let's soak the media so that when you tug on it, it doesn't injure any roots. And pretty similar roots. So when it comes to geraniums, and again, this is only one example, you can say that the CloneX and the cinnamon had pretty similar results. Look at how happy the plant is. So this here is the Purple Splash Rose with hormone CloneX. And again, examining for roots, don't quite see any. Let's soak it and start tugging. It looks like I feel something. Here we go. And let's rinse. Fantastic results. Even though the plants look dead, these plants are very much alive. Check out all that root development. Look at this callousness that's happening. Beautiful root structure, all in just a few short weeks. So we're definitely going to be propagating some Purple Splash Roses. Here's some Purple Splash Roses prepared with honey. As you can see, the plants don't look so good, but let's see what's going on below the ground. In comparison, nothing's happening. Check that out. There's some callousness happening down there. So, I mean, these cuttings should still eventually root and develop, but again, nothing compared to the CloneX results when it comes to purple splash roses. And now let's take a look at the cinnamon results. Here we go again. PS for purple splash. Again, the plants don't look too special. You're gonna soak it and pull and rinse. And if you take a look, again, a little bit better than the honey, but I wouldn't say we've got any root development, just callousness happening. Again, these cuttings are still viable, but significantly different than the CloneX results on purple splash roses. Here we have our citrus plants dipped in CloneX hormone. And let's just see these results. Again, I like to inspect the sides for any root development. Don't quite see any yet. Let's rinse the media and start pulling. And these all pretty much came loose. Let's take a look. And no root development at all. When it comes to CloneX on citrus, these are the Eureka lemon. There could have been different results with a different lemon or just more time, but the plant still looks healthy, but no root development at all. Here's citrus with honey. As you can see, the plants are not looking good at all. Let's see what's happening below the ground. I'm just gonna add a little bit of moisture so that the cuttings come right through. And let's rinse out the tips. And you can see there's quite a bit of significant browning happening at the cutting joints compared to the CloneX, which better preserve those tips, resulting in better success. And last, let's take a look at the cinnamon on citrus. Again, the plants are looking green overall. This one over here seems to be dying back. I don't see any root development at first glance. Let's soak the media so they come loose. Give it a little pull. And it appears that none of the citrus took to any, and actually, if anything, the cinnamon's done something over here. There's some callousness happening on this tip, but again, no rooting development anywhere. So between the citrus and the CloneX, kind of a tie there. Next, we've got here is our mint cuttings dipped in CloneX hormone. You can see the plants are green, new growth happening all over the place, actually on all three cuttings. So we got 3 chances to see the results here. Giving a little bit of a pull and a rinse. Check out these roots. CloneX roots on mint. Happy plants. Here's the honey on mint plants. This one already died back. I don't know where the second one went, but here's the third one. Let's add a little bit of moisture. You can see there's a little bit of growth happening here on the plant. Give it a little bit of a tug and a rinse, and no root development. So again, for those of you that are thinking about using honey as an option, and I'm kind of jumping to the conclusion here, just be careful with the results. For one, dilute it, but for those of you that are using concentrated honey, you can see that the results are by far the worst compared to these other alternatives. And talking about other alternatives, this one here is the mint in cinnamon bucket. And aside from the beautiful green leaves, this one is so excited to live. Look at the roots popping out of the container. It is a super happy cutting simply using cinnamon. This actually even trumps the CloneX results. Check out these roots. Look at that. So again, 3 cuttings for 3 demonstrations, and you can see cinnamon can produce fantastic cutting results. The next cutting that we propagated is the Miss Figgy fig. If you remember, this was in storage for about 4 to 5 months in the back of our garage, and just check out the beautiful growth. I can already see root development in here as well. I don't know if you see this little white root that's sticking out there, and another root down here, another root over here, another root up there. So definitely a sign of life. Check out the Miss Figgy fig also. It's pushing out new figs. It's very important that if you've got growth, that you remove the figs, especially in that first year, so the energy and the resources go towards developing more vegetative growth and not fruit development, especially when it's such a young plant. We're loosening the media with some water, pulling, and I see roots. Let's rinse that up. Here we go. CloneX roots on our Miss Figgy fig cuttings that we brought back to life from being in hibernation for about 4 to 5 months in our garage. How cool is this? Here's our Miss Figgy figs in honey. And as you can see, there's some growth, which is great. Looking for root development, don't quite see any. Let's carefully loosen the soil media. Again, it's just a 50-50 perlite vermiculite mix. And what a huge difference. It's as if the honey preserved the cuttings and didn't encourage root development at all. There's one root. Right there is a little teeny tiny baby root. So eventually these are gonna come to life. And then here we are with our Miss Figgy fig cutting in our cinnamon bin. And when it comes to roots, what more could you possibly wish for than this? Ton of roots and some growth, just like we saw in the CloneX bin. Let's loosen the soil media. Give it a little pull. And you can see the difference now. I mean, huge root development here, some root development there, but the difference between the cinnamon roots, which are fantastic results, compared to the CloneX roots, let me rinse these off again, is that CloneX simply pushes out more. So between the two, I would take the shorter roots with more, like just super ultra vigorous root development compared to the longer and fewer root development. So again, CloneX would win even on this demonstration as well. But just sharing with you that cinnamon is a viable option and should be considered when propagating your cuttings. So the next thing we're going to do here is now up pot a lot of our successful cuttings that we just demonstrated. And I want to share with you a few helpful tips to succeed in how transferring your cuttings from the cups into their next pot, or even if you're going to put them in the ground, you can integrate some of these next steps. For your potting mix, what I've got here is basically a 3-part blend. I'm using perlite specifically, again, because it's going into a pot. If this were going in the ground, I would not use perlite. And also peat moss, again, specific for pot life. And then I've got some compost over here. I'm basically going to mix these 3 parts in order to create my potting medium. This here is going to be our tray that we're going to now fill up with the soil medium. We're only going to fill it up about halfway to make room for the cuttings that are then going to go into it. I'm adding a little bit of pressure, but not much, so that there aren't any air pockets that could dry out the roots that are going to be working their way down into the cells. So let's start off with our passion fruit cuttings. Look how beautiful, again, that root development is. I'm going to set that there. And we're basically covering around the roots like so. And just check out how beautiful this is. How much money would you pay per plant? You've just created all of this free plant material that's genetically identical to proven winner plants, such as these passion fruits that have been provided to my family for over 10 years. Parfionca pomegranates, the world's best tasting pomegranates. Little Miss Figgy figs. All of these herbs, mints, that you can now generate and propagate more of them, simply applying these methods that we've been teaching over the last few weeks. We all know the value of earthworms in the garden. And to feed them, you got to feed them organically. And Ivory Organics has a product that gives your plants all 6 plant macronutrients. Over 90-95% of the plant products out there only offer your plants the NPK, which is your nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, important for growth, greening, flowering and fruiting, and root development. However, plants also need, in abundance in the soil, are calcium, sulfur, and magnesium. What calcium does is it's in the cell walls of all the plants. Magnesium is the heart of the chlorophyll molecule, and sulfur is important also for the greening processes and metabolic processes within the plant. So you got NPK, Mg, SCA are the 6 plant macronutrients you can find in the Eyal Organics all-purpose fertilizers, which include azomite. What we're going to do is just sprinkle a little bit near the top, and what it's going to do is it's going to feed the soil biology. We didn't really see any earthworms, but the biology includes a lot more than just earthworms. There's also beneficial bacteria and mycorrhiza networks that are going to, be happening. We're just going to sprinkle a little bit around each of the plants. We're not really fertilizing. We're just making sure the plant has everything it needs to grow and to help stimulate that soil biology. This is basically going to be a jump start on making sure that those networks are happening within the soil and the root, and it's just going to create a lot faster and happier, healthier, longer lasting plants. There's the Eyal Organics Super Blend, and then there's the Eyal Organics Premium Blend, which simply has a lower NPK, but still has all 6 plant macronutrients. Next, we're going to water gently. And when watering, the goal is, as we did with the cup in tub method, is make sure that the water level is only at the bottom 10-15% of the tray. Right now, these cells are soaking up all of the water and there's no water in the tray below. So I'm just going to continuously water until I see the tray beginning to fill up with water. In the meantime, the water is coming in contact with the fertilizer and drawing it down into and in between the soil media and beginning to enrich the plant with all the nutrients it otherwise didn't have for the last month, living in that perlite vermiculite virtually sterile mix. The next thing we're going to do is whitewash the plants, and this is the least understood gardening topic in the country, if not the world, yet something that's been practiced since BC times. And whitewashing is simply a process of lightening the plants, and what they've done in primitive time is simply put limestone or clay or other products, including mud, just to help cool off the tree trunks so that they wouldn't burn in the summer sun. Eyal Organics has formulated a patent way that lasts just about as long as paint, but is Armory certified. And the reason for not putting paint on your plants is that paint's going to end up in your soil virtually immediately. As the plants grow, the paint's going to slough off, contaminating your garden soil. What Eyal Organics has done is created a long-lasting formula which includes a lot of the primitive methods, but in a long-lasting formula that lasts, again, about as long as paint. You're basically brushing it on your tree trunks, lower branches, protecting the heart of the tree. But in this situation, we're going to dilute the product. This could be a can of paint if you filled it up with water, but this simple pint can make up to 5 gallons of foliar spray. Eyal Organics also has a ready-to-use formula that can be used to spray the entire plant, like so. And what we're doing here is we're simply putting like a sunscreen over the plants. We're simply lightening the effects of the sun. We're also protecting the plants from pests and disease, as the products include castor, cinnamon, clove, garlic, peppermint, rosemary, and spearmint, in addition to diatomaceous earth, which helps repel most pests from your plants, especially at this sensitive stage, to get them off to an excellent start. If you're looking for your plants to get a little bit wider, there's a way that we can correct that as well. And that is simply making your own Eyal Organics ready-to-use spray. I am basically using a solution that I've already mixed up. A lot of you have used your cans for brushing on the products on your trees. And you can simply also take your solution that you've made up. This one here is a little thicker. It's something about half the consistency of the brush on. And I'm simply going to use that to make my own ready-to-use spray. It's recommended that you filter the product to remove any products that could possibly block the spray head. I'm just doing this a little faster. I'm going to rinse all the parts, afterwards. But I just want to show you how easily you can simply take, and I'm actually making it concentrated just to show how white we can go with minimal harm to the plant. Again, obviously, if you block too much, it could interfere with photosynthesis. But at this point is there are cuttings, and even if they get filtered sun, that's actually going to help the plants from, again, drying out and burning out. The benefits of whitewashing, and again, in an all organic, Armory certified way. We're now going to shake the product and just check out the difference now. Check out how much wider it is. See that? So if you're looking for a wider solution, simply start with the pint-sized can. And if you want it even wider, just come back and spray it again in about another 10-20 minutes. But I'm completely content with the results here. Plants are watered. There's a nice, coverage down here. The bottom 5-10% of the potting media is in contact with water. And now we're just going to push it into some filtered light here in the canopy of my 5-in-1 fruit tree. And again, the goal, just as we started with the cuttings, you want to make sure that they get morning light and afternoon shade. And this is where they're going to rest for the rest of the day until I put them in even a more safer position. That's only going to give them just filtered light for the initial week or two. And as they continuously grow, we'll uppot them again to a larger container, or ultimately the trees will find their way into the ground. So I want to share with you a couple university studies before we conclude. And the first one comes from the University of Hawaii, where they wrote, they tested diluted honey as an alternative to commercial rooting hormone to stimulate new root growth on cuttings. And the result was that honey works much better for some types of plants, such as peanuts, more so than the rooting hormones. But for other plants, such as hibiscus, they rooted better with rooting hormones. And another example was from the College of Agriculture and Forestry from the Mosul University in Iraq, and they basically were taking cuttings of bottle brush plants, and their results were cinnamon extract contains plant stimulating substances and vitamins, and the effect of the extract is a synergistic effect with the growth regulators because it contains salts and vitamins. Their conclusion was if you mix cinnamon with rooting powders or hormones, you can actually end up with results that are superior to simply using just cinnamon or just the rooting powder or rooting gel. So they did a combination of two products for maximum results. And I guess kind of as what we saw in today's lesson, cinnamon created larger roots, and the hormone gel that we use, the CloneX product, created just a lot more but shorter roots. So maybe the combination of the two would result maximum root stimulation and maybe greater length, possibly. But again, that was the results from the Mosul University in Iraq. Anyways, I hope you found this lesson informative and educational, and if so, as always, give us that thumbs up. And if you have any gardening friends and family, share this lesson with them. And as always, keep growing with Ivory Organics, and wishing you all happy gardening.